Phase 2, if you go out 3 weeks from the 18th, which would be June 8th, other things can open, including retail, restaurants, lodging, and then for personal services, nail salons and day spas. We here in town have spent a lot of time talking about what opening the restaurants would mean. And we don't have a lot of specific guidance yet. You know, that in other places, the governor has said 10 people max into any space. Well, if you do that to a restaurant, you're going to put them out of business in a day. So we have a downtown revitalization committee, which met for the first time in several months yesterday. And what we talked about was the possibility of closing North Washington Street from Elm Street to Orange Street on 3 consecutive Thursday, Friday, Saturday sequences starting the week of the May 8th. I think that Thursday is the 11th, if I'm not mistaken. And it would close from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. It would be blocked off. There'd still be access. We've had preliminary conversations with the fire department. There'd be access for fire, police, and so on. But the idea would be to put umbrellas on the sidewalks and out in the street for restaurants so that they can have a chance, given social distancing, to make money. You know, there's just no way they can make money with 10 people in a restaurant. We're talking about expanding the allowances for the town for serving alcoholic beverages outside. We still, and Representative Poirier has worked very hard with one of her colleagues, Paul Feeney, on getting that through the legislature, and we're still waiting for final guidance on that. But if things go according to plan, North Washington Street would be closed Thursday, Friday, Saturday, beginning the week of June 8th for 3 consecutive weeks for a couple of hours, close to traffic, that is, so that restaurants would be able to expand their services. And we'll gauge what happens in July, depending upon how successful we are in June.
Which, if there is a silver lining in all of this, it's the time of year that this would be occurring. You couldn't do this in December.
Thank God we didn't have this happen in February, because
Yes.
I'm not sitting outside in February. I don't know about you.
We are currently at 241 cases. The numbers have slowed, to me, dramatically over the last week or so, when we were seeing, 20 cases or 30 cases a week. Now we're getting 1 to 3 cases a day, which is significantly less. And that's the trend we hope to see. It truly reflects those sacrifices people have made with the stay-at-home and the working from home. And as we go into that next phase, we'll be watching closely to see the impact upon the case numbers as we go forward.
What I have found fascinating about watching this develop is the fact that scientists are learning more each day. The latest, I believe it came out last night, I received a text that the surfaces aren't as dangerous as we thought they were. You still want to clean them, but not to the point that we originally thought.
Right, exactly, which is great because unfortunately, we have to learn more about this, but it gives better insight. The other area is going to be the serology, the blood tests. There's still a lot of information they don't know, so they want people to not just get blood tests, but still continue with the nasal swabs so we can get better information and know more about when, in the course of the viral disease, where you start developing antibodies, so you'll have a true picture when you look at antibodies, whether someone is infectious or not. We don't know that yet, so it makes things interesting as we go forward.
We are the United States of America, but each state is independent. Mm-hmm. I was reading in today's newspaper that some of the statistics states are releasing are compiled much differently than how we compile statistics here in Massachusetts. As a result, the numbers are very misleading.
Yes, it's always the challenge when you look at figures on trying to know, is it apples to apples or apples to oranges? Massachusetts has been very aggressive with testing. We have higher numbers, and that's something I've always felt, that when we look at other states whose numbers aren't so high, some might be density of population, but some of it has to do with the numbers of testing. So when you look at how many people have been tested and the case rate, that's where you get to see a true reflection of the burden of the disease within the population.
North Attleboro's, as far as deaths, second in the Sun Chronicle area, the 10 communities, to only Attleboro. I was talking to someone this morning, and they said, why is North Attleboro so high compared to other communities? And I believe you told me once that it has to deal with the number of residents you have in rest homes.
That's right, exactly. Attleboro has a high burden. They have quite a number of long-term care facilities. And as we know, those who are over 65, but particularly in the 80-plus group, are so much more vulnerable for their current illnesses that they already have, and the fact that a number of them are truly at the end of life. So you add something like this on top of that, and it may hasten things a little bit. And so I think that's why we were seeing the numbers go up. Now, while we are at the second number, we've been holding pretty steady for a number of weeks, so that the numbers who passed on were earlier in April, and now we're not seeing numbers happening like that, and I think that trend will continue.
Our call volume has increased in regards to the PPE. So take March 15th, for example. If we had a call for a shortness of breath, we would not be wearing gowns, full masks, and the like. Today, shortness of breath patient gets a full Tyvek suit, gowns, eye protection, N95 masks. So, and that's the wave of the future, and that's what we need to prepare for now, is making sure we have enough stockpile of PPE, because moving forward, those calls will be in that protective clothing.
Shortness of breath, certainly related to COVID. Someone's having a heart attack. Do they also have shortness of breath?
Absolutely. Heart attacks, if they have a history of COPD or congestive heart failure, asthma, those are all indications of shortness of breath, and it also could be COVID.
PPE, I immediately think of mask. Your men and women have to wear the full gear. Is that gear capable of being washed? I've seen your new washer there, but I think that's for the suits you use when you battle a fire. I mean, are you using these gowns, for lack of a better word, once and then disposing of them?
No, so we are disposing of them. So at the very beginning of this, when the Tyvek suits, we were able to disinfect the Tyvek suits appropriately. However, we've gotten a plethora of Tyvek suits and gowns now that we can actually just dispose of them at the end of the call, which on the administration side, the COVID task force, which is myself, the deputy chief, and Captain Mike Bristol, we meet weekly and we develop our PAR levels, and we make sure we put orders in for the appropriate PPE to be picked up.
Which I'm sure probably 15 months ago, when you were preparing a budget, or the fire department was preparing a budget for this fiscal year, that was not in the plan.
It was not in the plan. I mean, we're lucky enough to have a agency that comes in and stocks our EMS supplies, but I can tell you, back then, we didn't have all this PPE stuff. So it's definitely changed. It's definitely been challenging, but we're prepared, and we're actually now building a plan to get PAR levels established for N95 masks and gowns.
As I mentioned earlier, I watch the news, I read the newspaper daily, and I can understand, but it's also alarming, that people are not calling 911 when they might be experiencing pains that a year ago they would have gone to the hospital. Your advice, I would assume, is callers go to the hospital.
Absolutely, 100%. So, I mean, when it relates to heart condition, time is muscle, as they say. Is a short window to get you into a cardiac cath lab to get rid of that clot that could potentially be causing that chest pain. And then in relation to strokes, there's a very short window of only 5 hours of the onset of symptoms to get you into the hospital and get you treated with certain medications. And if you wait too long, then there could be a detrimental outcome with that.
Take us through the process. Someone calls 911 on behalf of a loved one, might be in their living room. They haven't collapsed, but they're seated in a chair. They're very uncomfortable. They call 911. The dispatcher picks up. Take us through the conversation. What are they being asked?
So they're being asked, obviously, what's the nature of the emergency? Then when they get that, then they start asking the screening questions. Any shortness of breath, any sore throat, any altered mental status, anything related to the COVID-19 symptoms. And then at that point in time, the dispatcher then dispatches the apparatus. They'll dispatch the ambulance, but they also dispatch a fire truck as well, too.
As you'll recall, during our last panel discussion, we were talking about reopening and pulling together ideas and plans and trying to get an understanding of what that would look like in town hall, our facilities for our services to make sure that we were able to provide all of our essential services. At the same time, putting together a budget to get passed through town council. So that continues. We're taking in the governor's guidance for reopening, the phases that he has, mirror some of the suggestions that our town departments have been putting together for our reopening. So it's been a constant, ever-evolving process of looking at what we can do, what we can't do, understanding where our limitations are, what constraints might have to be in place, looking at all the different scenarios that would impact town hall and facilities, working daily with the public health director, emergency management, and our economic development team just to try to understand and put our arms around this behemoth of reopening. I mean, we pulled the emergency brake, came to a complete stop, and now we're trying to figure out how to get it all back up and running again. So no easy process, but we've got a great team to work on that and kind of put a plan into place.
North Attleboro does not have an elected town manager. You are, of course, hired to be the town manager. The governor, and I'm sure you've been following his press conferences, people were protesting, waiting too long to open, waiting too long. He does announce his plan, and then he gets, it's too soon. Tough being in politics.
I would, venture to say absolutely yes. And we get, different calls about everything from pet adoptions to businesses to every matter and, breadth of the subject of can we or can we not? And so, look, the bottom line is, I think what we have to do as a town is weigh the situation, understand what the risks are, how we can mitigate those risks by putting in, effective strategies to counter that, to ensure that the public health of the town is a priority, that everybody's safe. There may be some inconveniences. Well, let me say this. There are going to be some inconveniences, right? We should all expect that. But until there's a vaccine or until there's herd immunity or an ability for us to come back in the way we were, I think a lot of these changes are going to be that new normal that a lot of people are talking about. And we as a town have to figure out and balance the needs of our residents, our citizens, with our employees, and with the services and the outcomes that we have to be able to deliver.
How difficult was it? And I know Mike Gallagher certainly assisted in putting the budget together along with department heads. How difficult was it putting together a budget with so many unknowns?
Sometimes you felt like you were, coming up to the plate, right, blindfolded, right, and not even knowing when the pitcher was going to throw the ball. So as you said, a lot of unknowns. But what we did is we looked at what we had spent previously in the previous fiscal year. We looked at what we had remaining in those accounts. We looked at the trends for local receipts and what the governor originally said pre-COVID-19 in his budget address, and kind of put our finger on the pulse of the legislature to kind of understand where they're at. So I've talked with our representative and asked to get an insight if there was any information available. Not a lot, but she remains in contact and keeps us up to date with all of the information regarding what's happening in the legislature. So we devised 3 scenarios that called for a reduction, right, in state aid. And we planned those 3 scenarios and developed a budget that we're well ready, capable, and able to sustain 2 of those courses of action.